A breeze, hardly more than a whisper of wind, stirred the curtains that hung on either side of the long window, and wafted into the room the scent of the wisteria covering the wall of the house. The policeman turned his head as the curtains faintly rustled, his rather glassy blue eyes frowning and suspicious. Straightening himself, for he had been bending over the figure of a man seated behind the carved knee-hole desk in the middle of the room, he trod over to the window and looked out into the dusky garden. His torch explored the shadows cast by two flowering shrubs, without, however, revealing anything but a nondescript cat, whose eyes caught and flung back the light for an instant before the animal glided into the recesses of the shrub. There was no other sign of life in the garden, and after a moment of keen scrutiny the policeman turned back into the room and went to the desk. The man behind it paid no heed, for he was dead, as the policeman had already ascertained. His head lay on the open blotter, with blood congealing in his sleek pomaded hair. The policeman drew a long breath. He was rather pale, and the hand which he stretched out towards the telephone shook a little. Mr. Ernest Fletcher's head was not quite the right shape. There was a dent in it under the coagulated blood. The policeman's hand was arrested before it had grasped the telephone receiver. He drew it back, felt for a handkerchief, and with it wiped a smear of blood from his hand, and then picked up the receiver. As he did so, he caught the sound of footsteps approaching the room. Still holding the instrument, he turned his head towards the door. It opened, and a middle-aged butler came in, carrying a tray with a siphon and a whisky decanter and glasses upon it. At sight of the police constable, he gave a perceptible start. His gaze next alighted on the figure of his master. The tumbler on the tray shuddered against the decanter, but Simmons did not drop the tray. He stood holding it mechanically, staring at Ernest Fletcher's back. P.C. Glass spoke the number of the police station. His flat, unemotional voice brought Simmons' eyes back to his face. "Oh, my God, is he dead?" he asked in a hushed voice. A stern glance was directed towards him. "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," said Glass deeply. This admonishment was more comprehensible to Simmons, who was a member of the same sect as P.C. Glass, than to the official at the telephone exchange, who took it in bad part. By the time the misunderstanding had been cleared up, and the number of the police station repeated, Simmons had set the tray down and stepped fearfully up to his master's body. One look at the damaged skull was enough to drive him back a pace. He raised a sickly face and demanded in an unsteady voice, "Who did it?" "That'll be for others to find out," replied Glass. "I shall be obliged to you, Mr. Simmons, if you will shut that door." "If it's all the same to you, Mr. Glass, I'll shut myself on the other side of it," said the butler. This is a very upsetting sight, and I don't mind telling you it turns my stomach." "You'll stay till I've asked you a few questions, as is my duty," replied Glass. "But I can't tell you anything. I didn't have anything to do with it." Glass paid no heed, for he was connected at that moment with the police station. Simmons gulped, and went to shut the door, remaining beside it so that only Ernest Fletcher's shoulders were visible to him. P.C. Glass, having announced his name and whereabouts, was telling the sergeant that he had a murder to report. "Policeman," thought Simmons, resentful of Glass's calm. "You'd think corpses with their heads bashed in were as common as daisies. He wasn't human, Glass. He was downright callous. Standing there so close to the body he could have touched it just by stretching out his hand, talking into the telephone as though he was saying his piece in the witness box, and all the time staring at the dead man without a bit of feeling in his face, when anyone else would have turned sick at the sight." Glass laid down the receiver and restored his handkerchief to his pocket. "Lo, this is the man that made not God his strength, but trusted in his riches," he said. The sombre pronouncement recalled Simmons' thoughts. He gave a sympathetic groan.